So why do we think it's important to look at additional designs in segments 1 and 2? Why do we think it is worth reconsidering this part of the project? A couple of reasons. First of all, this project has significant impacts on low-income Black and Hispanic neighborhoods. And in that way, it builds on a long history. Historically, the highways that have been built in Houston, like across much of the United States, have had negative impacts on low-income minority communities for the benefits of others. If you look at the historical patterns of desegregation, if you look of segregation, if you look at the historical redlining maps, you will notice the degree to which these highways were planned through Black and Hispanic neighborhoods when they were first built. And we can look in Houston at the impacts that those had. This is I-45 being built through the 4th Ward, Freemanstown. On the left, you can see the commercial part of the neighborhood. On the right, you can see the residential part of the neighborhood, and you can see how the highway was bulldozed right through the middle of it. Not only did this highway take out a significant swath of the neighborhood, it transformed everything around it. Within a short period of time, that commercial heart of the neighborhood was entirely gone, replaced by an expansion of downtown, as this highway literally cut those commercial businesses off from the neighborhood that they belonged to. And all of this happened in an era where not only was there no kind of environmental regulations around highways, but we didn't even have the Voting Rights Act in place. That this was a period in which these neighborhoods literally did not have a voice in this. And you can see what happened. This is a section of the 5th Ward as it looked immediately after World War II. Here is what that same exact area looked like when the Texas Highway Department bulldozed 2 freeways through it. This is what that area looked like when TxDOT further widened I-69. And this is what this would look like under this project. And what we note when we look at the analysis of this project is that this really was not taken into account. All of the alternatives in segment 2, which did not add lanes, were eliminated at a point in the process before community impacts were already evaluated. By the time the evaluation criteria considered displacements, all of the narrower versions of this project were already eliminated. And in that first screening, there is only one case where right-of-way was considered, which is right around the North Main Cavalcade area, which also happens to be the richest and widest segment of segments 1 and 2. So basic question here, is it acceptable to have negative impacts on low-income minority communities so that others can have a better commute? And should this project mitigate its own impacts or also the impacts of the original highway? Do we take past injustice as a baseline, or do we try to remedy that? Secondly, traffic projections have not matched forecasts. If you look at the traffic report that this project was based on in 2014, looking at 2011 traffic numbers, the projections in that report have not held up. Traffic has actually gone down rather than increased. So one of the basic statements that this project is based on has not actually held up. You can look at projections for future travel time in here. See that the project is projecting a significant increase in travel time if the current highway stays. We don't know that that matches up with what's actually happening. And we also know that if we add capacity, it doesn't necessarily reduce congestion. This is the Katy Freeway. It was widened, which meant traffic sped up, but then the amount of traffic on the freeway close to doubled. And as a result of that, it's now moving slowly again. And adding capacity takes space. Those additional lanes are directly leading to homes and businesses being displaced. We need to consider impacts on local traffic. This project does things like remove the North Main off-ramp, which means people have to drive an additional 1.5 miles on surface streets. We need to understand the impacts that this project has on local traffic, because simply making freeway traffic better doesn't do any good if neighborhood traffic gets worse. We need to take advantage of the Metro Next Transit improvements. Voters approved local bus improvements, BRT, two-way regional express bus service. The potentials of none of that were considered in developing these alternatives. And we know we can reduce impacts through design standards. Now, this stuff matters. Not having a merge lane matters. Left-hand exits matter. 40 miles per hour curves matter. Not having an inside shoulder makes a freeway less safe. But we think we really have to consider each of these, because bringing a freeway up to design standards also has significant displacement impacts. And we know different design standards, different aspects of this, don't all matter the same. So we think this also needs to be considered. We need to understand freight movement. The traffic studies for this project were really based on the movements of single occupant vehicles, but freight isn't going to the same places people are. And so if we really want to build a project which will improve freight movement, we have to understand freight movement. We need to consider safety for everyone. It's not just about the main lanes. It's about the frontage roads, and it's about all of that local traffic. If we look at crash data right now, you'll notice there's crash hotspots along the frontage roads on this project. This project, done badly, can actually make the streets of Houston less safe.